I made a bit of a controversial video about why I never use scant 1/4 inch seams. It made a lot of quilters really happy, but it made a few quilters really angry. There were actually some great comments on both sides of the scant seam debate, but there were also a handful of downright nasty ones. And I'm telling you, it really took me out of my joyful and merry world for a little bit. But I have a special thank you to those who gave me a thumbs up and supported me when I was discussing this really important issue. So whether you caught that video or you're just joining the conversation, I'm going to offer you some clarifications, and I'm going to touch on some of the concerns that people had, the questions people said, and I'm also going to reveal some improved scant seam solutions that were inspired by your fantastic input. I can't thank you enough. So let's dive back into the controversy, the world of scant seams, and put this issue to rest. Hi everyone, it's Mary from Joyful and Merry Quilting. So as a quick recap, why do I refuse to sew scant seams? Because scant is not a measurable term. In a world, the quilting world, where precision is paramount, the term scant is anything but precise. Even when I've tried to explain this term to quilters, many still struggle to understand it. They don't know what it means, they don't know how to achieve it, and even if it's a term that's been used forever and ever and ever, that doesn't mean that there isn't a better way to explain it. So as a quilting instructor, I have tried so many different ways to explain scant. Let me tell you, it just wasn't making sense to them. Take a look at the comments on my last video. It is clear that this is an issue for many quilters, not just new quilters, but experienced quilters as well struggle with that term scant. Now, if the term scant doesn't bother you, and if you have it perfected and your seams are always perfect and you know what you're doing when it comes to sewing those seams, that is great. These videos are not for you. Many quilters need this reassurance, and that's what I'm here for. One quilter told me she used at one time what she thought was a scant seam with her first quilt. Well, it was too scant. The pieces, when she began washing her quilt, started to come apart because she had sewn her pieces too close to the edge. Another said she couldn't figure out how scant she needed to be. A little scant, a lot scant, and she was so discouraged by that that she actually stopped quilting. She abandoned her project because her pieces were not coming out accurate, her blocks were crooked, and she was so frustrated because that term was really getting in the way. Okay, the term scant actually comes from the fact that when we sew two pieces together and then we press them open, there is some space that is taken up by the fabric that has folded over itself, as well as folding over that actual seam. It's called the turn of cloth. I'd never heard that term before used in quilting. I know that it's used in sewing, and a couple of people did bring that term to my attention. I appreciate that. Now I know what it's called. Turn of cloth. When you take your piece and you press it in one direction or another, then you have a little bit of fabric that is actually up over the top of that seam, and it's making your piece a little smaller than what it was intended to be. Turn of cloth. So that's where the issue is, and that's why we have a problem. I offered a solution with the painter's tape. I used the painter's tape, we cut it, we positioned it, and I thought it was a pretty good alternative, and I still do think it's a very good alternative when we don't have some other ways that we correct that issue with our sewing machine. Now, some sewing machines, you can move the needle a tiny bit over, keep moving it until when you test your piece, you have an accurate 1/4 inch seam. And then you can use your 1/4 inch foot. You can sew, you can use the marking on your machine, whatever works for you. The marking on the machine and the 1/4 inch foot, for the most part, should be accurate. It should be a 1/4 inch, but it doesn't allow for that turn of cloth. That's where we have our problem, and that's where our quilters struggle with their own machines. Now, some machines don't have that option of moving their needle, and that's why we put the guide on our machine in order to help us get that accuracy that we need because of that turn of cloth. So the issues that people had with the remedy that I gave with the tape was, first of all, they didn't like stacking the tape and then trimming it to size. They felt like that was difficult to do. You had to use an old rotary blade. They weren't interested in that. So that was one of the issues. The second issue, and I think probably the most important issue, was they didn't like the fact that the tape extended over the top of their bobbin case lid. Now, if you have a bobbin case that's underneath, then you don't have that issue. But many of the new sewing machines now, you load your bobbin at the very top. And when positioning the tape actually went right over the bobbin case. That was an issue because you can carefully remove that bobbin case, which I do all the time. The tape doesn't come out and then I can just push the tape down again, but some people didn't like that. The other issue was they didn't like that every time they removed the tape, then they had to go through that whole process again to reposition it. That's just the way it goes. We still have to do that if we remove the tape. But then one of our subscribers, she's listed as Lake8836, gave me the best solution ever to that issue. And I thank you at Lake8836. This was phenomenal. She suggested that we use these vinyl strips. They're by Marcy Baker. They're called Sewing Edge Reusable Vinyl Stops for Your Machine. There's 5 strips. Obviously, I've taken one off because I used it on my machine. And oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how easy it was to use and how perfect my seam came out without a whole lot of effort. I was so impressed. I couldn't find a negative with it. Now, again, I'm not saying that the tape isn't a good alternative. I've got it on my machines and I'm going to keep it on my machines, but I really love this option. You can remove them, you can reposition them, and I'm going to show you how to remedy the issue with the bobbin case. That's the one that I said was a stickler for everybody. There's a way to fix that with this tape that I was really impressed with. They really work well. I have just examples of what I have done to test out the feed and the markings on my sewing machine. The first block up here, I pieced together 2 2.5-inch squares. I just used a generic 1/4-inch foot. It was one that I bought to add to my little traveling machine. So I put that on there, and you're not going to be able to see this easily, but the measurement on here should be 4.5, but you can see that it's short. Then I used the 1/4-inch guide, that little marking on my sewing machine that's right on the bobbin case, which that's really imprecise, but I wanted to use it just to check and see. And it, the same, you can kind of see they match up. This is also short. So those two were really not a super good option, I didn't think. Then I got a new sewing machine, the one that I'm going to demo on today, and it's called the Janome 3160 QDC. It's a little power horse. I just love it. And I never even put the 1/4-inch foot on it because I'm so used to using the tape, I just never even got it out of the box. And so I thought I'm going to give that one a check, because one of the big questions everybody seemed to have was, why would a sewing machine company create a foot or a marking that wasn't accurate? And my answer to that was the turn of cloth. That's why. Depends on the fabric you use. But then I thought, I wonder if my foot works on there. I'm going to test it out and see. Well, I'll tell you, I did. I tested it and it actually was perfect. It was so good. It came out 4.5 inches exactly. So I thought, oh, on that machine, I can actually use my 1/4-inch foot. It works. So your 1/4-inch foot may be a good option. Who knows? You just have to check it out and test and make sure. And if it's not, if you notice that there's a discrepancy there somehow, then you can dig into the tape. So I was really shocked and surprised when I figured that out. Then the final one was my Sewing Edge Vinyl Stops by Marcy Baker that I just showed you. And again, you can see that those line up exactly the same too. And they are a 4.5-inch across because I was able to adjust the tape on my machine. So I'm going to show you the demo on the machine just so that you can get an idea of how to position this tape and why it was so easy to do. What a great result I had in the process. So let's go over to the sewing machine. We'll use some of these Marcy Baker Sewing Edge vinyl strips and I'll show you how well they work. So let's go over how we attach the vinyl strips to our sewing machine. Here they are. I've taken one out. Then I've already positioned this and I've already tested it, and it actually is accurate. So I know that when I sew 2 pieces together, I am going to get an accurate finished piece. I have taken my foot off. I've placed my ruler so that I drop my needle just to the right of this 1/4-inch marking. And then I placed my vinyl strip right next to it so you can see that it's not going anywhere. It's all flush with each other. So now I know this is positioned now. Of course, I had to try it a couple of times to make sure I had it in the right spot. And once I got it in the right place and my piece measured accurately, then I know I can put my foot back on and I am ready to sew. So that's the good part. Now, one of the issues that people had with using the masking tape was that they couldn't take their bobbin case off because the tape was stuck on the bobbin case. And once they pulled it off, then everything came up. They thought maybe they had to pull this part off and that was going to cause an issue. So what you do with this, you take an X-Acto knife or some kind of a blade and you just cut right along that bobbin case carefully. You can just trim that piece of vinyl so that when I remove, look, there it is. It's just right on there. It fits. It's a little bit crooked, but it fits right back together. And it was my first try, so you can see that it's nice and flush. And this is where we are concerned, is right here, that this stays here. So when I remove my bobbin and I replace it, this is not going to come up and it's not going to move. It stays right where it is. Now, if you need to move it, maybe you're doing something where you need to have this removed, you can take it off, set it aside, and you can replace it. You can use the same strips here. You still have to go through the same process, and now you've got this split here, so you need to line that up. But either way, it's still so convenient. So if you don't mind the extra expense, $10.95 I think it is for 5 strips, and you'd rather use something like this that's already trimmed and cut and is removable, doesn't leave a residue. I have heard that it does pick up lint after a while, but still lasts a very long time. And the person who suggested this, Lake8836, thank you so much. I ordered them immediately when I read your comment, tested them out, and I am so happy with the results. So this is why your input is so valuable. We are all here to learn from each other in a positive, joyful, and merry way. I appreciate your comments. I have been quilting for a lot of years and I have picked up a lot by trial and error, by attending classes, by reading articles, by watching videos, and I am trying to pass that information along to you. But I also learn from you and from your comments and from those things that you're able to offer in addition to what I have presented here. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your positive vibes and your productive feedback. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry, and I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful day.